couple years ago, I met Jane. Jane grew up in foster care, and she aged out of foster care without a plan for her life. Jane ended up homeless, but not before she was married twice, had 2 children, became an addict, was imprisoned, was released from prison, and that's when she became homeless. Jane hit rock bottom, and she didn't believe that her life could be anything of material substance. She lost hope in herself and the world. That's when Jane walked through our doors. She was looking for a food handout. A lot of people come to us because they need food. Little did she know what she would leave was so much more. United Against Poverty, our purpose is to inspire and empower those in poverty to lift themselves and their families to economic self-sufficiency. We are comprised of dedicated men and women who are working together in a relentless pursuit to answer the question, how do you transform a life? United Against Poverty offers hope and a path forward for the disenchanted, those who have given up on a better life for themselves. So you might be asking, don't we already have anti-poverty programs? I mean, we've been fighting this war on poverty for a half of a century. And the answer is yes. The war on poverty was declared by President Lyndon Johnson in 1964. 52 years, 9 weeks, and 5 days later, and after spending over $22 trillion, almost said billion, but it's $1 trillion, we have made little progress. Nothing of substance to show for the effort, the money, and the time. But worse than that, millions of lives have been squandered and lost, lives that could have been transformed. These are people who could be contributing and adding to society with their God-given potential. Fundamentally, the problem is that our current approach is broken. In every community across our land, well-intended charity-minded groups, not those in this room, but well-intended, charity-minded, just make sure you hear that, charity-minded organizations and individuals are providing support to people living in misery by handing out food and other necessities to those in need. But what we know is that you can neither grant nor serve someone out of poverty. And the unintended outcome is always the same. Appreciation turns to anticipation, which breeds expectation, which then transitions into entitlement, then dependency. So it's those 5. You might want to remember that. Appreciation, anticipation, expectation, entitlement, dependency. Too many people are trying to solve a chronic problem using an emergency response. The unintended consequence is dependency. So what makes United Against Poverty different? We preserve individual dignity by providing a hand up rather than a handout. At United Against Poverty, we don't apply an emergency response to meet a chronic need. We recognize and respect the whole person, and from that basis, we've learned to achieve the transformation that truly transforms a person's life. So first, by addressing immediate needs, it's a 2-step process. And first, we start with meeting immediate needs, and in doing so, build trust and resolve temporary crisis situations. And second, by providing long-term support that addresses the underlying chronic issues that cause the emergency, preventing emergencies in the future. In one step, we seek to build dignity and engender trust, because no one cares what you know until they know that you care. And this is the basis of our partnership with those who participate in our programs. It is the key that unlocks the door to step 2. Before we get to step 2, I want to share with you an example, our primary example, of empowering participation. So our nonprofit grocery stores provide support and food to those in need through an exchange model or a co-op model versus a handout model. Low-income families with real needs pay a handling fee for nutritious food and shop in a grocery store atmosphere. They're able to purchase produce, proteins, packaged goods, paper products, personal care items. I thought I would throw in peppermint patties since I'm using all these P's. And over-the-counter medications at an average savings of 65% compared to a typical retail grocery store. And as someone said earlier today, for those that are living on survival budgets, a couple $100s a month goes a long ways. We estimate that we're able to preserve those in poverty 2 months of their wages through our food subsidy grocery program. Our grocery program, and by the way, it's self-sufficient in the sense that we get donations from companies like Walmart and Kellogg and Tropicana. Those food donations combined with what we purchase so that we have the variety, we combine, they go on the shelves, and members are the handling fee that they pay for that covers the overhead, and we don't have to fundraise to make that program possible. It's an incredible social enterprise model because it's meeting needs and it's not costing philanthropists dollars and cents to sustain that program. So our grocery program enables participants to be a part of their own solution. Because after all, no one wants to be a beggar. With campuses in Vero Beach, Fort Pierce, and Orlando, we serve over 1,500 families a day, 6 days a week through our grocery stores. Last year, our grocery centers helped over 12,000 unique families retain over $10 million in resources within their survival budgets. In around 10 years, just over 10 years, we have become the largest direct service social service organization in the state of Florida. There are many that have been around for 30 and 40 years, and we have surpassed them in our service model because at the end of the day, my belief is that people want a hand up. They don't want to be provided a handout. They want to be a part of their own solution. Our 3 campuses also serve and provide access for other nonprofit organizations to serve through our campuses so that wraparound services and a continuum of care is available to the poor. This provides social service organizations the most effective and efficient access to collaborate with one another, thus limiting the duplication of services, and the grocery program provides a portal from which thousands of families can access these campus services, and these nonprofits can access the thousands of families that come to get groceries. So I've talked a lot about subsidies and food and other organizations. What about the transformational aspect of what United Against Poverty is all about? At our centers, we offer 3 other programs in addition to our nonprofit grocery program. Our crisis stabilization program provides assistance to families facing immediate emergencies such as homelessness. Our centers offer, our life enrichment general education program provides access to GED preparation, GED testing, post-secondary education, vocational counseling, and on-site workshops that promote lifelong learning. That's something we talk a lot about at United Against Poverty, is helping people become lifelong learners. Let's take one of our campuses as an example, Indian River County. Through although our other programs are essential to helping prevent food insecurity and homelessness, our STEP program provides the path through which people living in poverty can change their paradigms of life and realize their purpose in the community. So this is not your typical workforce development program. It's much more in line with Kara and Chrysalis, not the typical workforce development program. Each person receives emotional intelligence training, which develops executive function. Each person we coach and mentor and we place in a job receives support for up to 3 years until we are ensured that they are able to succeed in life and in their careers. So we don't end whenever when someone's placed within a job, which is very typical of the workforce system that's out there across the country. In 2016, 100% of 100 of our STEP graduates became employed, creating an estimated $2.4 million wage impact on the local economy of Indian River County. By the way, it's a smaller community, 140,000 population. So that's a big chunk whenever you're looking at a smaller community like that. All this was accomplished through the hard work of 5 committed staff and less than $1 million in locally philanthropically raised resources. Now, imagine the impact of having one of these campuses in every major city across the country, or even every county across our country. And I would say we must imagine it, or something like it, because if we don't change the way that we're addressing poverty, I believe that we're in serious trouble. $1.032 trillion was spent by our federal and state governments to fight poverty last year. Statistic may have already been up there, but 1 in 3 Americans receive benefits from at least one of the 80 means-tested welfare programs. And just in case you're wondering, this does not include Social Security and Medicare. Doesn't include those two. And the awful thing about this is, of that disbursement of resources, a great portion of that is invested in programs that are contributing to the problem. I mean, investing resources in handouts contributes to the problem. That's the whole 5 steps to end independency. Organizations that, like the ones that have presented here today, that are generating lasting change, need to be the organizations that are getting that support. In terms of the broader war on poverty, let me back up for a second. When it comes to moving the needle on poverty, what is it that we need? Let's step back for a second and say this is a massive problem. What is it that we can do that will move the needle on poverty? We need to reform entitlements. We need organizations like the ones here today to get funding. I think ultimately, in terms of the ability to really move the needle on poverty, I think that we need to demonstrate that poverty is not a lifelong sentence on a scale large enough to get people's attention. And if we can do that, I think that we'll help Americans and our politicians to step back from the approaches that we've been taking over the past 50 years and say, we can take a developmental approach. Let's take the resources we have and invest them in, and that's what all of the organizations have been talking about today. Instead of investing external resources, meeting basic needs, the investment needs to be made to the inside, internally, to the person. And if we can do that, if we can achieve that kind of impact and show that poverty is not that lifelong sentence, then we are able to, I think local communities would become catalysts for change. I believe poverty can be beaten. In just a handful of years, we have seen it, one life after another life after another life. I believe it can be beaten. Jane was not defined by her past. She is enthusiastically employed, living in her own home with her children and working on her bachelor's degree. So let's do something to help millions of other Janes who need a hand up, not a handout, to become what God has designed them to be. Let's do something different so that we can get a different result.